In the name of God, holy and undivided Trinity. Amen.
Amen.
All right, here's a joke. Yeah, I know. Not a big response to that. Okay, why is a mouse?
Why is that?
Someone knows it.
Yeah. Why is a mouse when it spins? The answer is the higher the fewer.
Very good. Why is a mouse when it spins? The higher the fewer. Do you know what that means?
Not
Oh, that was a joke that was told transgenerationally in my family. And I finally figured out what it's from.
Can you say it again?
Why is a mouse? Why is a mouse when it spins? The higher the fewer. What do you mean? You don't understand that, Roy? Come on. And I've been bewildered my entire life. And thanks to the internet, I have an answer. Woohoo! So why is a mouse? A mouse has to do with the centrifugal governor of an old steam engine. It was the counterweight. And when it was pushed up by the steam, it would go slower. So it was fewer in its rotations than when it was lower. And it had to do with regulating the steam in an old steam engine. But it became this sort of byword in World War II. And it was current usually in Britain. And it was associated with another one, like someone asked you if you read a certain book. You might respond by saying, no, but my sister rides a bicycle. Which again has nothing to do, it's sort of a crazy sort of, so what does that have to do? Well, the Buddhists actually use things like that to sort of push your dependence upon your logical mind. And so the Dalai Lama was asked about this and asked about what is the most confusing thing for you in terms of what it is that humanity sort of does in its logical mind. And he said this. He said, man is the most confusing thing because he sacrifices his health to make money. Then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health. And then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. The result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he is never really going to die, and then he dies having never really lived. Whoa. Snap. Wow, why is a mouse? So I was considering that because the parable, of course, today has to do with, and Paul's dissertation to the Romans has to do with how is it that we rightly live? And what does it mean to rightly live? What does it mean when seed falls on good ground? And how often is it that the seed falls on the path or on the rocky ground or on the thorny ground in you and in me? Or what is it about our efforts in the world that it is met by all those different grounds? You know, there are ways in which we determine that we'll be effective or useful in the world, or we think we haven't figured out really what life is all about. And it's sort of, he's holding that up in question. You know, what is it about the seed falling on good ground and yielding 100-fold or 30-fold? And what allows that to happen? Well, we have the logical mind that tries to figure all that out, but for Christians and for Eastern mystical thinkers, there are other ways of sort of getting into the good ground. And one of those ways is the labyrinth. We happen to have one here. And I was researching what a labyrinth is all about, how long it's been, you know, sort of current. And it goes back to Minotaur, you know, to the ancient Greek myths, and of capturing and holding tight the man-bull Minotaur, who was captured and held in a labyrinth. And so Christians seem to have leapt from that myth into thinking about the labyrinth as a way in which the animal nature and the human nature could find peace and healing or containment. And practices emerged in the Middle Ages that were so important that they were actually incorporated into the floors of great cathedrals. Reims has one. Chartres, most famously, has a huge labyrinth which dates back to the 12th century. And so there are practices that have been Christian practices of being with the labyrinth. And I was wondering, well, how does that really work? Well, to practice the labyrinth as it's come down to us, one of the ways anyway, is that if something's troubling you about your life, if you are concerned, you have a question, or you have an issue that just won't let go, one of the ways that you can attend to that without sort of a logical explanation or a logical process, but a process, is to go to the entrance to the labyrinth and hold your intention in your mind at the entrance to the labyrinth. So you stand on the first stone, and you just stop and hold whatever your question is. And then, letting that go, you proceed at whatever pace seems most natural to you at that moment, to move through the path of the labyrinth to its center, without expecting anything. And then when you get to the center, to just stand or sit for a time and just allow yourself to be rooted and grounded in the center of the labyrinth. And nothing may happen that you're consciously aware of. No logical thing may happen, no voice may be heard, but you just allow that to be. And then to move again out of the labyrinth on this determined path, this path that has you turning and moving in a way that's like a dance. But for Christians, through centuries, it's been a place of healing. That this practice of being with the labyrinth has allowed for healing to settle into people's hearts and minds and bodies as a meditative practice. A practice that we don't really understand. You know? Even though I've explained to you why is a mouse, the higher the fewer, the whole connection, the logical connection, which we get so lost in trying to understand and control, is ultimately the process of our lower nature. That we're trying to figure out life in a logical, systematized way, and we think we know so often what is going on. And maybe we don't, and maybe we do. But for many of us, life presents conundrums, presents circumstances and things that are happening in your family or things that are happening in your life, transitions that you're going through, illnesses that don't seem to be amenable to a sequential sort of approach. And for us then, mystical practice, meditative practice, walking the labyrinth can be a place of clarity and understanding and healing. And so I commend it to you. We are one of 16 other labyrinths in Rhode Island. Labyrinths appear now so frequently, most often with churches, but they're happening in other settings as well. There are labyrinths in nature, as ours is. There are labyrinths in buildings. There are portable labyrinths. There are many different ways of approaching it and experiencing the labyrinth. But the thing that it calls upon is a letting go and a trusting that we heard of in the first lesson, that God is working goodness all the time. And we get blinded to that sometimes because we have understandable concerns, we have understandable, the things that are brought to us through the media, not just circumstantially, that trouble us, that distract us. And our lower nature grabs onto it and holds on. And sometimes we just need to let go and rediscover a basic trust in the goodness of what God is doing in our lives and in the world, that God is working goodness in spite of all that we see and can be told about how it isn't that way. And the labyrinth, again, is a way in which we can reconnect with the goodness of God in us and in the world by finding ourselves connected to nature, to the ground, to who we really are in the midst of our confusion, in the midst of all that we're being told about who we are and what is valuable in the world. So as the Dalai Lama observed, it's so easy to get caught up in what the world says we're to be about, and to spend our energies trying to get something for which we then have to spend our energies to address all the consequences of the getting, and it goes on and on and on and on. And God has other intentions. God created it in a different way, and God is still working with us and working through us. And so finding that again, recovering that, allowing for healing, can be through the simple discipline of a labyrinth walk. It can be through a simple discipline of including meditation in our lives. It can be in many practices that allow us to depart from the what this translation calls our lower nature, and to be connected to the spiritual life that can renew not only our spirit and soul, but also our bodies. And a labyrinth can be a way of opening that door, as illogical as it may seem. So do you know the difference between a maze and a labyrinth? They can seem to be the same.
Yeah, but I'm you can get caught and stuck on track.
Correct. A maze has many different places where you can get stuck and dead-ended. Because a maze has all these different byways. A labyrinth, you begin and you walk a path and you're safe. You're not going to get lost. You come to the center and then you return. And you can let go of all of the searching for the way. It's there. And that is indeed the truth of what we understand about God's movement in our lives. The path is there. It's not a dead end. And sometimes we forget that. So a labyrinth can reconnect us with the way, the truth, and the life. Amen.